Hey everybody, I'm Amber.
And I'm Maddie.
And we're Witches Talking Tarot. And today we are going to talk about a fun little subject that most people would recognize, the word of changelings. So changelings, there's several movies out there about them, lots of folklore.
Lots of books. I read
books.
a book. I'm just going to throw it out there. I can't even fucking remember what the book is called, but it's by Holly Black, and she's a famous author who writes about fairies and changelings. Like, maybe I mentioned it before. It was like, this town lives on the outskirts of a wood, and the changelings come, or they'll randomly like mix, like take a kid and like. Anyway, it's really interesting. And
I'm like, maybe you have talked about this before. I'm not sure.
But instead of like killing the changelings, from what I remember, I may be wrong, people just kind of like accept them. Like, oh, he's a changeling. Better stay clear of him. But they don't like kill them.
Well, and they don't always kill changelings in all the lore. You know, it's just that's the end result of torture that is used to find changelings in some of the stories that are real life stories, like real true life stories. I personally, like, I was interested to find, as I did my research for this episode, I have always thought that changeling lore was specific to Ireland or Celtic region, but it's not. It's Slavic and Nordic as well, which I was very surprised to find. And the Nordic story that I told you earlier, and I'll tell later when we get into that, was the funniest one that I had come upon.
Well, I think it's also really interesting that everybody hears changelings and we assume babies. Well, that's not always the case.
Right.
Sometimes it's adults.
Right.
And I swear I had read a book. Oh, I did. Another shout out to book, PC Cast, Divine by Mistake. This woman is like a teacher. She wakes up in the fairy realm. Like,
this one you have to.
Yes. So like it's definitely check it out, Divine by Mistake, because not only is she in the fairy realm, but they're like, hey, you're a queen. You know what I mean? I don't think that's how it really goes.
Oh,
it'd be nice.
Yeah, but definitely shout out to PC Cast, because I remember one time she share our video on her Twitter or something.
Oh yeah, PC Cast is so cool, you guys.
And I'm gonna be meeting Ellen Dugan soon, so we're gonna be doing more author shout outs from the witchy community. I'm sorry, I'm really excited. No. You will be listening to this while I'm hanging out with Ellen Dugan. Yes, I do mean hanging out with her. We've talked on the phone. Look, when I looked down and I was like, I don't know any Ellens except my cousin, whose last name is not Dugan. I was like, who the fuck is calling me? And then it was my favorite author, and I was like,
oh my god, I just won the Danimals prize. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yes, but it's like, it was so funny because I was having a really shitty day, and I was just like, oh, my day is instantly better. Like,
that is so awesome,
right? Yeah, I don't know. You said shout out to PC Cast, and I was like, I guess I should give a shout out to where I will be while you guys are listening to this, because we're recording before I go out of town, so that you all will not miss any of the wonderfully witchy content that we love to bring our
wonderful witchy family.
Oh, I say wizards, witches, wizards, and regular folk, because I'm lame and I love saying that, because I was like, witches and wizards, we got to include the people that don't think they're witches and wizards. So I went with regular folk because I had watched Princess Bride not too long before. And I was like, that's so funny.
So I had to look up Holly Black because I was like, I'm pretty sure. And yes, she did surgically get her ears shaped like a fairy, because that's what she writes is
hardcore.
Yeah. She writes. And also, I don't remember the author that I read in middle school. It was called Wicked Lovely. And it was about so it was a whole series. Sorry guys, might as well give these out. Get this part out while. So it's by Melissa Marr, and it's about a girl who has like the sight, who's like she can see the fairies, but if you see So
that does make sense, actually.
Right.
That
So
makes
you
a
have
lot
to
of
like,
sense.
she's like constantly like, I can't see you. But the fairies are actually kind of like kick ass. Like they ride on dogs and shit. And I love that. Reminds me of like
Labyrinth vibes. Sorry.
I love Willow, the
Yeah,
little,
the
the
guys,
like the
yeah.
brownies or
Kevin,
whatever.
what's his name? Yes.
They're like riding on the fucking owl.
Fuck yeah.
Love them.
I love that part of Willow. I actually shared a meme with that image, like specifically the two little
I stole
guys.
the baby.
But so you know what? You say that I stole the baby. Anybody who doesn't know what a changeling is, let's just fill you in. It is the fairies or other magical creatures.
Right, not just fairies.
Right,
It's like
not
I
just
think
fairies,
I read
like,
trolls.
Trolls in the
else.
Scandinavian lands. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
because they don't because I mean fairies, fey creatures exist everywhere, but fairies don't necessarily exist everywhere.
Right.
So, but fairies or other fey creatures switch out a human being for one of their own. Okay. Now, one of the things that I thought was the funniest when it came to the baby switching versus like regular adult or child switching was that fairy babies are ugly and annoying. So the lore was that the fairies would want to switch out their child for a human child because although human babies are also annoying from a needy aspect, right? They're loud, you got to change their poop and all that stuff, right? So the same things that make the fairy babies annoying, the human babies have the same annoyance, but human babies are way cuter than fairy babies. So they like to switch them out so they can have the cuter one.
I love. Well, I also read it's not just babies that'll get switched out.
Right.
Sometimes it'll be like an elderly fan folk,
right,
or somebody like that, or I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, right. Sorry.
So like so they get to
the fey creature.
Yeah, an elderly fey creature or something that's on its last leg, and they want the last comforts of being taken care of by, like a baby, by the family, basically, while they're dying. Also, sometimes they'll leave like a log that's like enchanted to look like a baby, or like a yeah.
That's funny to me because in the car we were talking about the possibility of what these things could be, right? Because I was like, you know, a baby with colic is a more annoying baby. So, oh, now I have a fey baby, right?
Right.
But a log, if you were to have perhaps been too rough with your child, and like you had mentioned, shaken baby syndrome, an enchanted log
would just kind of
sit
there.
Yeah, and that's like, oh well, that kind of
and also
really in line.
Like sickly babies. You said, well, back then we didn't know about the cold sore herpes virus,
right?
You know, so we're kissing on babies and we're loving on babies. Baby gets sick with RSV. Baby gets sick with the herpes virus, and what happens? They can't breathe. They can't move. They're kind of just like. They're sick. They're sitting there. They get pneumonia a lot of times. Even nowadays, both of those, the RSV, the herpes A, is it A?
I have no idea.
I don't, the one that gives you cold sores, whatever, will put a baby in the hospital and can be fatal nowadays. Back then, there was no antibiotics.
Yeah.
There was no modern medicine. So like babies died a lot before there was, you know.
Right. And what made somebody think that they had a changeling? One day you have a child who looks very much like your child. And then one day, all of a sudden, your child just looks slightly different. It's very similar, but different. Sorry, we have twin puppies. They were in the same stack.
They look the same. They just have different fur color.
Like, exactly. Like they have different texture of fur. And I'm sorry, Midge. Smidgy was like, excuse me, ma'am, I'm sleeping. And so she likes to sleep behind me so I can't sit back. But it's funny because her sister likes to do that to my daughter, who is Smidgy's owner. So I think that's funny too. Because like Roz was just complaining about Monkey getting behind her so she can't sit back. And I'm like, that's what Smidge does to me.
So the changeling is actually very sad because
the factual changeling is. The lore is kind of fun, but the real story is not.
So part of the lore and unfortunately part of the real life when it comes to the changelings is a way to tell if a baby is a changeling is to either make it laugh or speak.
Well, and not just a regular baby laugh though. Like when you make a changing laugh, it's not going to be like it's going to be like ha ha, because you do something really stupid, and like that's how you get the changeling to laugh at you. Because like some of the examples that were given to me when I was reading was like using a little pot with a big long spoon, or vice versa, a great big cauldron you're cooking in, and you're using a little wooden spoon to stir it, and just like things that to a baby they wouldn't know that's ridiculous, but somebody who has a thinking mind would totally know it's ridiculous and give themselves away as a changeling.
Well, laughing. And one of them that was like so sad to me was like literally whipping the baby or the changeling until eventually they talk. Like
I didn't read that one, but torture I did read. I just didn't read.
They're like talk, and like they're not talking because they're a baby, obviously,
right? And
this isn't the Bible where you can just whip a fucking donkey until it talks. You know what I mean? Like
yeah. Like the whole I like the fun things where it's like in the Nordic culture they do very strange things like the long spoon, little pot. In Slavic culture, they use eggshells in strange ways to try and trick the changeling into showing itself. In Ireland, it did seem to be more torture.
It did, because one of them was also like if you put the baby in the chimney or whatever while it's on fire, well, then the changeling is going to jump up the chimney and escape. How many times did that fucking happen?
The changeling, like,
okay, sorry, you're right. Like Ireland was a little rough when it came to these.
Yeah, because there was one, and this is a real life story of what happened, and actually nobody was convicted of murder, surprisingly. So there was a grandmother who had helped, like she was a wise woman, what have you, like the village magic lady, you know, and so her grandson must have come down with some kind of illness. The parents were like, oh wait, was he okay? He either came down with an illness or he was like very intelligent but different than everybody else, because I can't remember if this is the same story or not, but this kid also was accused of being a changeling because the kid remembered everything they read for like a year or more, which is not supposed to be possible. They didn't like to go out and play sports because they'd rather like read, and they were like articulate.
That reminds me of something I read. Like something that I read was like sometimes people who were neurodivergent were accused of being
definitely
changelings when really they're just
autistic.
So that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, because it does sound like this child was autistic, or maybe he was like a low-key genius living in a peasant household and like he was able to get his hands on books. So he's like, yeah, I'm not kicking the snail with the other fucking kids. I'm learning shit so I can get out of here. You know?
Like, well, why don't you like football? You're weird.
Right, exactly. You know? And it's like, yeah, I was going to make a football versus soccer joke. I don't know enough about sports to make the joke. So it was like,
it's just like the horrible stepdad trope who's like a coach. He's like, get up,
right? Yeah,
you know?
You're not manly enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so, like, that's what I'm pretty sure this kid from the story I'm telling is the one. Not, I don't think I'm mixing two up. I don't think he got sick. I think this was him, but he's different. So the grandmother tells the parents, like, we'll just take him down to the river for an hour a day and bathe the fae out of him because he's a changeling. Well, after like 2 weeks, he's still, I don't remember the specific amount of time, but they're doing it as prescribed by the wise woman, who is also this child's grandmother. They're doing it, and it's, you know, he's still himself. He's still the changeling. So they decide that they're just going to fully submerge him. Now, I don't think the wise woman told them to. I think this was the parents' decision because she said, bathe him in the river. It'll wash the fae out of him. It hasn't worked yet. Let's just get him head under, Except you can't breathe underwater, whether you're a person or a changeling. And he died. And everybody was tried. And nobody was convicted of murder.
Was this recent?
This was real. No, not recent. This was like 1800s, 1700s.
Well, speaking of the 1800s, you go ahead. That you know more.
Bridget.
This was
Bridget
like the last
Cleary, I think Cleary.
Something like that. But this was like the most recent from what I read. Like murders,
like late 1800s, early
either 1885 or 1895.
Okay. So this is actually, there's two inspirations for me saying to Maddie, we should do an episode on changelings. One, my cat Erebus. He's a fucking changeling. It's not the same cat. He's not the same cat. He's just as annoying. Don't get me wrong. But he's not the same cat. Like, legitimately, that cat is different. Like, he grew again after he was done full growing. And I don't just mean he gained weight. I mean, like, he is taller. He is longer. He is not the same. And the thing about changelings, with that whole, they're not the same, this lore all comes from before there was ever photographic evidence of anything. So, when you're as a young mother, you look at your kid and you're like, wait, something wrong with you? Did you hit your head on something? It kind of looks like maybe you have a little lump where you didn't have a lump before. Or you're changing a diaper and you're like, I don't remember them having a birthmark here. What? Like, I could be a changeling based on changeling lore because my mom, when I was like 18 months old or something, noticed my birthmark for the first time. That's, if I lived in Ireland in the 1800s, I guess I might have lost it. But so with the, not, that's mostly with the babies, right? With the adults, it's more behavior based, right? They accuse changelingism from a behavioral standpoint. And this Bridget, pretty sure it was Bridget Cleary, she was accused of being a changeling by her husband, and her whole family kind of joined in. Now, today when I was rereading her story, it was a shorter version, but the first time I read it, I remember there being much more to it because Bridget's husband, his mother, left them to go to the fairies. So he forbade her from ever going near the fairy mounds, the fairy circles, or anything like that. Now, Bridget, something like of the essence, like she's trying to get a job as a seamstress, right, to help the family out. But her husband would never allow her to work because of the times, that would make him look like a weak man. Pretty sure he was abusive. Don't remember that one for a whole fact, but as the story goes on, I think everyone will agree. Yeah, he probably was. So anyway, she got a new dress and she went into town without telling him exactly where she was going. And because he was terrified of losing her to the fairies like his mother, he was convinced that she had gone to the fairy mound trying to get the fairies to take her, just like his mother had. And so then a short while later, she gets sick. She comes down with bronchitis, which I'm actually getting over right now. So again, I could totally have been killed as a changeling. But Hazel's little witch Hazel's so cuddly. But hi Smidge. Yeah, she did. They have some jealousy issues. But so based on the dress thing and the bronchitis and the fact that she wasn't getting better from his home remedies, because they called a doctor and a priest out. And the doctor was like, oh, well, here's some medicine. And he's like, I do not believe in your medicine. Which, as a person who's like, I do not believe in Western medicine, I know I sound a little like hypocritical making fun of him, but also
it's 1895. It is.
Yeah. He's like, this milk and herbs from the wise woman in town. That's what's going to clear you up. But she wouldn't drink it, so they forced it down her.
Oh my gosh.
Didn't work. So he was like, little stupid things, like he'd ask her to say something 3 times, right? And so she'd tell her, she'd answer. And then he'd ask her again and she'd answer. And then on the 3rd time, he'd ask her again, because 3 is a magic number, guys. And she'd be like, bitch, I already answered you twice. I'm not saying it again. Which to him meant like, oh, she's a fucking changeling.
Right.
Because she won't say it the 3rd time. She'll say it the first 2. Or maybe it's like a religious thing. She can't say it the 3rd time. I didn't think about that. But so then she's still sick. She's not getting better. Not only does he think she's a changeling, but her parents do as well.
Oh,
and some of her cousins. Like 8 people went to prison for her death. Like legitimately, this isn't like the kid one where they're like, oh, you couldn't have known he wasn't a changeling. They were like, this is horrific and you guys are all going to jail.
This isn't even a fucking little quick death either.
No. Bye, Hazel. She wanted to, please don't compete on the floor.
They burned her.
They did. Yeah. They eventually burned her. Like they did a couple of other things that I can't remember. And they burned her. And 8 people went to prison. Well, they burned her and she did not come back because she was not a fucking changeling.
Right.
So her husband buried her. Here's why I go, all the stuff he was willing to do to her. He was totally sorry.
Okay.
He was totally an abusive person. Like, who could do that to their loved one?
Force them to take that medicine. Like, yeah.
Well, okay, so that's right. I remember the thing I had forgotten, and now I remember why I forgot about it. After the herbs didn't work, and then something else didn't work, like the 3, like he asked her this question 3 times, she wouldn't answer 3 times. He poured their shit and piss bucket on her.
Why?
Like she woke up to that to force the changeling out of her, or to force the changeling to leave, so that she'd come riding back on a white horse, which is what he apparently expected, was that she was going to come riding back from the fairy realm on a white horse.
He sounds batshit.
Right. He absolutely does. He absolutely sounds batshit crazy. Like, dude, I can't remember his name anymore, but fuck that guy. Because, like, yeah. And then, like Addie said, he literally burns her, buries her in the backyard. And somebody finds out about it. Like, the law finds out about it. And both her parents, 4 of her cousins. Did I just do that right? Yeah. And one other person, I don't know who. Oh, the neighbor. Because the neighbor the whole time is telling the husband changeling lore. So he's egging the behavior on. So you know what? I think that's good for them, saying he has some guilt there.
Yeah, I agree.
Because fucked up. But on a lighter note, there's some funnier changeling stories. Like you had said.
Oh, okay. Sorry, it took me a minute. Okay, so
because we already talked about it. So it's like, what?
This woman, I believe this is Irish, I think. Okay, so this woman is just like taking care of a baby, no big deal. All of a sudden, she gets a knock on the door. On the door, she answers it. It's a fairy lady holding a baby that looks exactly like hers, and she's like, yeah, my fairy husband traded my baby without asking me, and I'd like mine back. This one's yours. So like they do this trade and then go on about their day. I just wonder, what was that woman thinking? I wonder if she was just like, okay, like,
or what if she was also like, you know what? I thought there was something
right, like, here you go. Just how surreal,
right? No,
like,
absolutely.
am I tripping? Like,
no, I can't. I literally cannot imagine. Like, as a mother of a child, I can't imagine. Like, I can imagine getting my kid mixed up with her cousin who she looked like a twin with, because that happened. And that's almost like we kind of did be like, oh, look, I have your kid, because my cousin's daughter and my middle daughter, when they were 3 and under, when they were 5 and under, they looked like twins. Like, myself and my cousin got our children mixed up when we didn't look them full on in the face, because that is how much they looked alike. Like, seriously, like they looked like twins. They were like that show from the 60s with the twin cousins. The not Mary Tyler Moore show, but it was a lady's name. I can't remember the show, but like yeah, anyway. There was a point. Oh, as a mother, outside of that situation where she looks so much like her second cousin, which is just funny because they're second cousins. But outside of that, I can't imagine being that mom who's like opens the door and presented with my own child, but I was just feeding them in their high chair.
Exactly, right.
What?
Oh, here you go. Okay.
Right. Well, and I read a funny one where it was Scandinavian lore. And there's a lady who thinks that her child has been replaced by a changeling.
Mm-hmm.
And she's doing one of the funny things to try and get the changeling to reveal itself. So she's got this little pot that she's making porridge in and a great big old spoon. And so she's stirring the porridge in the little pot with the big spoon. And the changeling shows himself because he laughs at it. And she's like, ha ha, I knew you were a changeling. And he's like, oh shit, you got me. And she starts beating him with the spoon. And then at her door, all of a sudden, there is a troll with her baby. And the troll says, like, she's like, here, take your baby back. I want my husband back. And she said, now look at the difference between us. I've been taking very good care of your child. You just beat my husband with a wooden spoon. Which I think is funny, but also you knew that there was a switch she didn't.
Right, exactly.
You know, it's like it makes me think of those, like, because there's a lot of birds, and there's actually, I learned in our honeybee research, or in just our bee in general research, whatever, that bees do this too. So I'm sure it happens across the animal world a lot, but there are birds that don't want to take care of their young, but they want their genes to spread. Mm-hmm. So they will knock some eggs out of another kind of bird's nest.
Yeah, fuck the starlings.
Do starlings do that?
It's horrible.
And I know there's some bigger birds too, because once the bird gets big enough, it'll predate on the other birds.
Like, I know it's natural, but like, if you have a fucking bird's nest outside your house and you're watching it happen and you're hearing the mama bird, it's fucking horrific. Nature is horrible.
Yeah, nature is a cruel mistress.
It is so horrible because it's like it is nature. It's natural, but it's like I don't want to fucking hear it.
No, I do get you, because like I was actually just talking to Corey last night, not on the same subject of changelings, but on the same subject of nature's a cruel mistress, or nature is cruel in general. I was talking about animal behavior from the standpoint of whether it's dog pack, fox pack, coyote pack, just a pack of canines. Okay. There is always the alpha, and there is always the lowest member of the motherfucking pack, right? And the lowest member of the pack gets the least amount of food.
Right.
And when anything goes wrong, they're the ones that the entire pack take their aggression out on. They have to take care of the alpha's babies. When they're going after dangerous prey or a dangerous situation, they have to risk their life before anybody else in the pack
does. A lot
of
times it's an older, like a super old, from what I read when somebody that's super old and weaker.
Well, and I mean, generally it is an animal that is weaker, period, but it's fucking sad.
It is so sad. I don't want to see it.
Yeah, it's like, imagine being that animal. Like, and some of us, I always joke that I'm the Meg of my family. So some of us maybe feel more for that animal because we feel kinship.
That's why I don't want to see it, because it's so, or hear it or anything, because it's horrible. I hate it when wild animals fight. Like, you hear two possums or skunks going at it. Like, just do it away from me. I don't want to fucking hear it. You know what I mean? Because it is brutal and it's awful. And I hate it.
Yeah, and so we kind of discussed why maybe a baby might be accused of being a changeling, and really from like the adult perspective, it's mostly that behavior change. And like from current era, we know it could be neurodivergence, but also things like schizophrenia presents at a later age.
Right, that's true.
And also women, in menopause or postpartum,
Mhm.
often accused of being changelings.
Well, they go fucking crazy. I speak from experience. Like, it literally makes you go fucking insane. Look, there's a reason menopause is a valid argument against murder. Like, and postpartum depression.
Yeah.
And I don't say that lightly.
Right. It's,
You know?
it's a hormonal imbalance
Yeah.
and you don't act normal.
Mhm. And it's sad.
I don't say that offensively. I just
No,
factually.
like, as someone who experienced it 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
100%. Oh,
is there anything else you can think
nope,
to say about
that was
changelings?
the only other thing I could think of.
All right, I think we're coming to a close with this episode then. I'm going to give a shout out to Pam,
Death by DVD,
Melissa,
Victoria.
Thanks for supporting us on our Patreon. You can find us there if you would like to support us at Patreon/WitchesTalkingTarot. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads at Witches Talking Tarot.
And we're on the X at Classiest Witches because we are the classiest witches you know. And if you interact with us on any of the platforms, I apologize. We haven't been very active because we both have a lot going on and I'm getting ready for a trip to Salem. So sorry, it'll get better this summer, I promise.
Yes, it will. It will. We've been having a crazy time here. All right. Well,
thanks for coming to listen. So, bye. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that.
I'm Maddie.
I'm Amber. And we're Witches Talking Tarot.
We are the weird optimistic.
I get soft like a sailor snubble. Flip the switch and let the cauldron bubble. Sam.
Wow.